Hello, and welcome to She Rises, the podcast where women in leadership take center stage. I'm Tiffany O, your host and the founder of Virtual Partner, where we champion humanity in the workplace to build thriving organizations. With over 30 years of experience in change management and servant leadership, I'm here to bring you powerful stories, actionable insights, and inspiring conversations with trailblazing women who are breaking barriers and redefining success. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, leading your own venture, or looking for that next level of impact, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to rise. Let's dive in. Welcome, Janis. I'm
Well,
so
thank
thrilled
you.
to be with you today. It's amazing that after so many years, we are still very connected. Everyone, my name is Tiffany O, and I'm the founder of Virtual Partner, founder, CEO, and Chief Visionary Officer. And today I'm on with a conversation with Janis Mitchell. Now, for all of you who don't know, if you're from the Central Ohio area, you probably know Janis. She's a mover and a shaker in the region, a woman in tech, and an entrepreneur that has been placing C-suite leaders across the nation. She has an eye for talent and an insight into business and all things She Rises, or the way women lead. So Janis, I'll pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And I want to pick up this conversation that we were having around what it takes to shorten the leadership runway for young people and some of the trends you've been noticing.
Well, first of all, Tiffany, was I just hearing that you're saying we were aging eloquently?
Totally.
Ah, I just need to make it perfectly clear that I haven't aged one bit, and neither have you. So let me just get that out there, make it very clear.
I love that. Absolutely. Grace, right? Grace,
Yeah, Grace, Grace, Grace.
grit, and courage. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. It's very strange that we're having this conversation because I've been having this conversation a lot, especially this week. The differences that I'm seeing in leadership, because I've been in the space since I was 20, calling on the C-suite, calling on the chief information officers, calling on CEOs of Fortune 500s. Yes, I've had that pleasure of doing it. And seeing the difference between confidence and the difference between arrogance, and how do we get there? And specifically, how do we get women there?
Mm.
And are they really not there? And I do see them there, but also in tech, why are the women there or why are they not going there?
Mm.
And to your question earlier about preparedness, right? And it's funny, I have a friend of mine that's the leader of the Somali community here in Columbus, Ohio. Absolutely love him. Obviously, absolutely phenomenal. And I was trying to convince him, not everybody in this world likes to be in sports. The thing about sports is it helps garner, especially the young lady, it helps build team building. It helps build sportsmanship. It helps build competitiveness. I think it's really good in building resilience. I was always in sports my whole life since I was a little girl, but I also was in very much I hate to say individual, but I'm very much being a severe dyslexic. I always I'm not the typical female. I think females like to be in that tribe mentality, right? I want to wear it what Tiffany's wearing. I want to know what lipstick you're wearing. Quite frankly, I could care less, right? I want to do exactly what you're not doing because I want to stand out. I don't want to be in. Most females want to be exactly what because I'm dyslexic and I had to have somebody when I served on the International Dyslexic Association. Janice, you really don't understand your problem, right? I'm all about what is it that I can do that I cannot look like Tiffany? What is it can I do that I am not like you? Because I'm a weirdo. My whole life I have always wanted to figure out what is it that I can do that I cannot be like you? And that was just because that was my brain and how my brain is wired. And I think it has been very, very successful for me in being an entrepreneur and being a female and being a leader that is just what it is for me.
Mm.
And I think that if we can teach young ladies that it is okay for you to be an individual, and it is okay for you not to want to do what everybody else it is. I think that we let our young girls go buy into media and do what everybody else is doing. I think we need to encourage our young ladies when they're younger. Back to my conversation with Abdi. In sports, we teach everybody how to do the thing and be competitive. But what do we really do anymore in today's day and age if they don't engage in sports
Mm,
to learn how to be a leader? I grew up in 4-H. And I don't think a lot of people understand that 4-H1 was founded in Ohio back in the 1800s. It's a worldwide activity. 4-H is an incredible activity that teaches an individual all of the things that you need in how to be a leader. It teaches you how to conduct a formal meeting. It teaches you actually how a meeting is conducted, how it's structured, what a president is, what a vice president is, what a secretary is, what a treasurer is, how to take meeting notes, how to bring a motion, how to second a motion. You start this at the age of 9.
wow.
You select a project, and oh, by the way, they have over 500 projects, and no, they're not all cows and pigs. You could take computers, you can take writing, you can take sewing, you can take how to learn and apply makeup. There's over 500 different types of projects, but the point is you learn how to start a project, you learn how to finish a project, you learn how to project manage a book, complete it to the end. And if you look at most of the leaders that exist in the United States, it's an overwhelming statistics of the amount of people that have gone through some sort of 4-H program or FFA program. But it teaches you different amounts of life skills than just a sports program. And I think if we were to be a little bit more open-minded and get rid of the stigma that it's just for cows and pigs,
Mm,
it teaches the kids how to support and build different life skills and the preparedness. We were having that conversation. What is it that we're failing our young leaders of today, our young women of today, and we're not teaching those life skills and the preparedness? I think, quite frankly, it can be answered in 4-H. I know it sounds skilly, but I was having that conversation with Abdi, and I've got them, and they're like, "Oh, we've been looking for this. We would love this, right?" And I think that a lot of people need to go back and to look to something basic like that, because our kids get too much screen time. Too much screen time. You engage in the motor skills. You're creating them new neural pathways in their mind. You're teaching them critical thinking, and you're teaching them the creativity and life skills that they need that translates back into the corporate America.
It's interesting you hit on this topic just to rewind the conversation a little bit. So offline on some of our B-roll, we were talking about a conversation I had with an HR leader earlier in the week, and a trend. I asked the question around what when did when do we need to start preparing future leaders for the front door? So my goal is to shorten the runway for women in leadership to under 10 years from the front door to the top floor. If I could use those expressions to try to put a visual around what I mean. And when I asked that question, she said, Tiffany, we can't start at the front door and the gap. And I said, well, I want to talk about where the gap is, because we now have 5 generations in the workplace and there is a gap. There is a difference. And how do we bridge the gap? And she said the gap really exists in secondary education and really primary education.
Yeah, yeah.
And those age ranges that you just mentioned are right there. So I said, well, what are some of the gaps you're noticing that if we could build programming around that, what would that look like? And she said to me, Tiffany, I believe that we are missing 3 fundamental skills. I said, okay, so talk to me about the 3 fundamental skills. And I'm going to grab my notes because here they are. She said, we are missing work ethic.
Right.
Work ethic, core competencies, leadership competencies,
Yeah.
and critical thinking skills.
Yeah, but all of those are taught in what I'm just talking to you about. So the work ethic comes because we're not in teaching the kids how to start something, holding their feet to the fire, if you will, from start to finish, right? We're too quick to let a kid drop out, and I think it's because this generation or whatever it is, I'm 60. So this generation is too quick to want to be a friend to our generation, right? I think it's the generation behind us wants to be too quick to be a friend to our kids, and that doesn't benefit our future. So
Mm,
I think the work ethic comes from, I grew up every Saturday. You had to fold the laundry. I had to do the dishes. Like
yes,
I
me
had to
too.
load the dishwasher. My brother might have had to wash the pots and pans. I mean, there was a set routine. I can't tell you. I don't think I know any kid that has a set routine and has to do chores. It's all sports, 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 sports. And I think I can't tell you how many hundreds of resumes of interns that I look at that have graduated college and have yet to have a job. Or you look at even on Facebook, or you have people that hit me up and they want their kid to have a job, and it's beneath them to work at McDonald's or whatever because their parents says, "Oh no, I don't want my kid working at McDonald's." Really? You're missing the point. Well, they can't work for $15 an hour. Well, does your kid have rent to pay, a car payment to pay? You're missing the point of why the child at 16 or 17 years old, the child isn't really working because they need the 15 or 16 bucks an hour. Yeah, they need money to, pay for their car insurance or whatever it is, but the reason why I believe fundamentally at that age is it's not to make your car payment. I mean, yes, they need to make for their car insurance. You're trying to lay out the foundation of what your friend was talking about is the foundation and the commitment of understanding the work ethic and of start to finish and finishing a project.
Mhm.
And it's also learning how to navigate with somebody else other than the parent or the aunt or the grandparent and understand how to take direction and guidance from a new manager.
Mm.
So these are all foundations because if you wait until they're the age of when the frontal cortex is done developing, which is at the age of 25, then they're going to become rebellious and they're going to shut down and say, I'm not doing that.
And that's
So
what
that's
we're,
beneath me. And then that's exactly what she's seeing. And go back and ask her
yeah.
because that's what she's seeing. By the time they're 22, 25, they're out of college. They've got this attitude. That's beneath me and I'm not doing it. At the ages of 16 or 17, that frontal cortex isn't done developing yet. And they're more likely to listen to the guidance and to learn how to be a little bit more cooperative, understand, and listen to a little bit more direction that's not coming from mom, not coming from dad, not coming from auntie, not coming from my grandparents. And maybe I remember I remember Zach worked for Susan, who's my son, at Yogi's Hoagies. And everybody's like, Jan, Zach doesn't need to work. And I'm like, yeah, he does need to work, right? And he had to go in there and he had to sweep the floors, right? And Zach was like, ah. And she's like, look, life's not about a democracy. I'm going to tell you to clean the toilets. You're going to clean the toilets. And he's like, yes, ma'am. And it's probably the best thing I could have done for my son.
I agree with you. I remember you tell me your age. I remember my first jobs. I'll never forget. I graduated from high school early, a year early. So 16, I'm out of school. So between like 11 and 16, my mom, she put me to work. So I remember going into junior high school and I'll never forget these beige leather boots, right? I wanted them up to my knee and it was the rave in the late 80s, right? Late 80s. I wanted these leather boots. And my mom, she said, okay. So she got me a job at the local daycare. And for 5 years, for 5 years, every holiday, time off from school, and summer, I worked at that daycare. And every time I asked for something, she'd say, I,
Leather boots.
she said, I think those are really nice boots. And she said, Miss Loretta said that you'll make enough next week to be able to buy your boots. So you'll go to work this week, and on Friday, you can go buy your boots. And she did that. And then when I got into high school, I wanted My auntie, this is what I call slave labor. She opened a restaurant and I worked at the restaurant 40, 80 hour. It was crazy. I worked full time, all off time, and after school. I worked full time there and I cleaned the bathroom. I ran the register. I ran the fruit salad bar. So 6 in the morning. And then back then we had to go to a place and buy everything fresh. There wasn't these delivery places that would
No, right,
deliver.
right,
So
right.
she made me walk, put money in my back pocket, made me walk to the farmer's market and buy fresh food for the next day's restaurant prep every single day of the week. It
Uh,
was the routine. And so last week I'm at the National Conference for Women. Who did I have in my booth greeting all the women? My 80-year-old auntie, who is she's doc, she's PhD. She still is the CEO of a foundation that she runs out of Pennsylvania.
oh, that's
She
hilarious.
still is inspiring generations. So I had her in my booth working with me as we greeted women. My point for telling the story that parents, that ethic has to start, to your point, Janice, at a
Yeah,
very early age. And it's not just one thing. Like
it's
mom made me get a job. And later on, when I got into high school, fortunately, Smith Klein Beecham, they noticed the work ethic. So, and my high school teacher and I got an internship in high school. Before I got out of high school, I had a job, a full-time job at a major corporation because, mom started all of this early. So it's not one thing. And teachers, FBLA, for you, it was 4-H. For me, it was Future Business Leaders of America, right? So
yeah,
all of these that are non-sports related places, Janice, to your point.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
want to know, I want to go back, Janice. I want you to tell me about your career and the career journey you had as a woman in tech, some lessons you learned, maybe a challenge you faced along the way, and then I'll have you look back to your 25-year-old self and give her some advice.
25. Oh my God. So, what was your question again?
I want you to start with your journey. Like, what inspired you? Like, I know how you started early. We know some of your insights and some of the ways that we can maybe bridge the gap for this next generation. But tell me a little bit about your career and some challenges you faced as a woman in tech that we can learn from. You had a cool career. Tell the
Oh,
story. We want to hear it. I want to hear it again.
I didn't have like a straight path. I mean, I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be an attorney. I worked for Russian Root Attorneys at Law. Like I said, I had dyslexia, and I was trying to work off a debt. I begged my way for David Rush and Bill Root, and they took me on. And then eventually they offered me a full-time job. Worked for them for quite some time, and they had a mess of some of their databases, and I started working with their databases. But after working for them and working for some other law firms, I just really liked working. I just found that I kept going down this rabbit hole with their databases. And then I decided that working in law wasn't about, I eventually thought that I was going to be a lawyer or a lobbyist. But after working for several law firms, I soon realized that being a lawyer wasn't necessarily about the truth, which I was always about the truth, and I found out that that wasn't the case. And I decided, loving the databases and going down that rabbit hole, that maybe technology was where I was going to be. So I went to go work for an application training company because he back then, that's when Microsoft Access was really big.
Yes.
So I was became working for an application training company, worked for their head of sales, helped this franchise open up one office in Columbus, helped them open up office sales in Toledo, open up an office in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I mean, I just loved sales. And actually, before that, I was doing also sales and medical sales, which was like calling on cardiologists and endocrinologists. Talk about cold call, hardcore cold calling. And that was also funny because they didn't want to hire me because I was not their typical salesperson. I didn't have any sales training. I'm like, look, you want somebody to open up a cold call and Dale's, I can do it all day long. And I was the first person that they hired. Was they only hired me on probation. It took me like 3 months. I was like the top third. I was a top third salesperson out of 500 in 3 months. I got bored with that. I went to go work for that application training company. Loved that, but got bored with that. Had a situation with my husband, quit because there was a little bit of a conflict. And that's when I started Info Fortress. Like I said, there was a conflict with my ex husband and I. Oh, I didn't start Info Fortress. I went to go work for this company called TechMate, and TechMate was a staffing company, and it was just two guys, two absolutely great guys that my ex husband knew, helped build their company, took their company from a couple of consultants up to lots of billing, and again, all kinds of cold calling, which I loved. just just staffing people, and then another conflict with my husband. Had to quit and had a non-compete, and there was only one area of the OSI model that I couldn't compete with them in, and that's where I went, and that was in information security. And I remember distinctly the chief information officer, Nationwide Insurance, goes, "So let me see if I get this straight. You know nothing about information security, and you just decided one day you were going to start a company in information security." I was like, "Yeah." And he rubs his hand on his leg. He goes, "Good luck," and walks me out the door. So it was pretty funny. But I knew a couple of people at the time. Actually, I sold enterprise storage, uh, people in enterprise storage. And so I know exactly how much it cost to, I knew how much it cost to reset a password for any large enterprise. It's very, very expensive. I knew on average, most enterprises, Nationwide Insurance, a couple of companies up in Michigan, a couple of companies out in California, how much it costs for you to reset your password and how many times a company might reset a password. So if you have one, on average, one employee resets a password once a month. So it costs millions, right? So if you reset your password once a month and how much storage costs, it got very, very expensive. So at the time, a lot of companies, this is back in the year 2000, we're talking about, isn't there a nice federated model if everybody could have one username, one password? If we could make it so that we're universal, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? And everybody's kind of hesitant to do that. And so I got invited to those negotiations. You had Bank of America, you had Bank One, Merrill Lynch. Oh God, I can't remember. Citibank, all of those. I got invited to those conversations in Washington, D.C. I can't remember all they were, but I went to those conversations. They all spent $10 million apiece to build this federated model as to how that went. And I went to those negotiations, learned about what this federated model would look like, or this single sign on as into what that architecture would look like. I went to those discussions, got to learn about that, and of course, it also involves, the password reset. So there you have it.
Mm.
And then there was a situation where there was a large insurance company that was kind of curious about that, and I went back to that guy that was kind of thought that I was a lunatic for starting an information security company, and I said, "Well, what if I could come up with a way that could help?" And he says, "Well, I'd be interested." And so there you have it.
Janice, I think this is so amazing. So you have this journey of a woman who started with what we would call a disadvantage, being dyslexic, and I share that with you.
Well,
Being,
so it really came from the thing that absolutely drove me nuts, right? Coming back to the dyslexia. That was also the time that you would log on to the internet, right? Create a new user password, create a new user. I mean, so it was just like the perfect storm for me. I also served on the board for the International Dyslexic Association. So it was a perfect storm because it was create a new user password, create a new user password, create a new username and password. And for me, it's impossible for me in that short-term memory to create a new username and password. Meanwhile, I'm going to all these conferences and I'm like, oh my God, right? There's got to be a way. That's why I'm saying you kind of look at the universe and there's got to be a way. And that's why I'm doing the math as to me. Everywhere you went, create a new user password, and I couldn't do it, right? It drove me bananas. See what I'm saying?
yeah. So you came up with a solution for yourself first, but you saw a bigger need in the marketplace. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah, that there was a business need that
A
needed
business need.
a business need, right? So if I'm a human and there's a business need and you have a business that has this many employees, I'm just one person, right? And I'm about ready to kill myself. If there's a business like a nationwide insurance and a nationwide or a Citibank or whoever, all these people, and they've got all of in order for them to function, right? This is how I'm thinking. If you've got all of these people, and in order for them to function, and they've got to function and do business or afford, and they've got all of these business partners, all of these suppliers that you got to do business with, your 401ks, they've got all of these business names and partner. I mean, look at how much money you're spending resetting, right? I had the advantage of how much you spend on storage and the password and resets. It costs a lot of money. There's got to be a way to fix it.
I think there's a lesson to be learned, Janice, and I wrote down a few things from what I heard. Number one, I just want to give you kudos. Like today, we have single sign-on, and
Well,
you
yeah.
you were the precursor to figuring that out, right? A catalyst for where we are today, technologically speaking. And while you are leading the precise resource, we cannot look back to the institutional knowledge that you have and what you've done for the industry. So kudos to you for that. But here's another few things I picked up on courage. Number one, for you to shift from being in a business that you founded with your husband.
No, I did not found it with my husband. Make that straight. Did not found it with my husband. Did not found the company with my husband.
Oh, the
No,
info security. No,
no, no,
no.
no,
You had a non-compete there.
no. I did not found it with my husband. I founded it.
Oh, 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 I stand corrected.
Yeah,
But I think
make
the
it
point
crystal clear.
crystal clear.
Crystal clear. No, my husband didn't like me working for this other company.
So the point that I got that loud and clear, but the point that I wanted to hone in on was you looked at your non-compete agreement and carved out a niche that wouldn't be a conflict, and that took you into this
Sec world. Yeah, yeah. I didn't.
infosec
Yeah,
world.
I didn't want to. Yeah, I didn't want to get. I didn't want to run into a situation with my old employer. Right.
Yes. And so I think the story there is to have the courage to do something different even if you've never done it before, and the resilience to be
Yeah.
able so that's what I was calling out, the courage and the resilience that you have. And the other one was that I called out when you met with the gentleman, he was like, yeah, good luck with that. You bet on yourself. You didn't necessarily have to have his validation before you moved forward.
Yeah, and Tiffany, I'll be frank with you, that's probably what's the biggest challenge that I have with me, and that would be it, is that I talk with a lot of people, and this is probably my girlfriend and I, what's the biggest disparity between us? She just asks question after question after question after question, and that's probably the biggest problem that I have with a lot of entrepreneurs that I have, and that's probably where I see the biggest point of failure with an entrepreneur, probably the biggest point of failure that I see with a lot of leaders, quite frankly, is that they want to find and they need to know every answer to everything before they do it.
Mm,
And I know for a fact that this is a dyslexic trait, is
mm.
that they'll walk up the end of the cliff and they'll just jump and then they'll fly and they'll flap their wings on the way down and they'll figure it out on the way back up.
I love it.
And you cannot, Tiffany, water does seek its own level.
Mm.
And if you're looking for every freaking answer, if every woman continues to look for every answer and to know the perfect answer before you do it, you're going to fail every single time. I mean, for God's sakes, if you're capable of giving birth and being a mother, and if you want every answer on how to be a mother before you do it, would you ever get pregnant? I mean, it's the truth,
Mm.
really, because you can ask every question that you want, but you're never going to run up against every single scenario before you do it. But you're still going to do it because it fills you with so much joy
Mm.
that it's just just an unexplainable feeling in the whole wide world of what it lifts you to an unbelievable power. It's the same thing. Sometimes when you jump off the cliff and you're scared to death when you're on the way down, but then when you take a breath and you figure out how strong you can be and the resilience that it gives you the strength, and oh my gosh, you rise above so much bigger,
Mm.
so much bigger. But it's until you believe in yourself and you know that the power that you have, until you've got the courage to stand up and realize how resilient you really, really are, it is when you find your strength, I
I
guess would
love
be.
that.
But you can't expect to know every single answer because that's not it. And I see too too many. It goes back to that. Stop faking it till you make it. Just realize that you do have the resilience and you do have the inner strength, and just take a leap of faith. Prepare the best that you can, but realize that you will make it through.
Mm.
And the other thing is, everybody wants to know, Tiffany, every time that I go and give a speech somewhere, and everybody wants to know about all my successes. And I'm like, you know what? You're asking me the wrong question. What do you mean? You should be asking me about all my failures.
Mm.
Because all my success, Tiffany, came from all of my failures to get to where I am today. It wasn't my success that got me here. It was,
Mm.
you need to ask me how many times that I've incorporated. You need to ask me how many times that I've failed. I mean,
How many times did you fail, Janice?
I think I've incorporated myself 21 times.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I've had 21 businesses.
Mm.
So, and that's the problem that we have with Shark Tank, and that's the problem that I don't like with these businesses that start up and they think that they're all that. And I know deep down inside, come year 5, you're going to fail, and they still got on this arrogance that they're hot, that they're hot stuff. And I just like, yeah, okay. How many businesses have you had? One, okay, right? It- And it's just not true. I have more respect for that you're okay, that you're learning, and that you're never going to be perfect.
I love that. I've been encouraging women to fail forward, fail fast, but you have to take the leap, like you said. You have to take the first step
Right.
and do it quickly and agile. And after this, when I restarted this year, Janice, you remember many years ago, I had an office in your office suite. And when I started this year, I decided that I was going to do 90-day sprints, right? So we were going to do whatever we wanted to do, we were going to do it quickly. So we're going to take 90 days, we stand it up, we launch it, and we see where this could go. But we weren't going to be afraid to start without having all the answers, right?
Yeah.
And that has been so much fun. I've met so many people. And to your point earlier about business problems, one of the fundamental things that we did decide to do when we started things was we wanted to address a real problem and try to run these PDSA cycles in which we could get to root causes and see if solutions that we were bringing forward solve a problem. So that failing fast, you can't be afraid to fail. You should expect it. Start with the expectation in mind that
Right.
that I'm going to fail, but I'm going to learn, and from that failure, I'm going to learn resilience,
Right.
courage, and also I'm going to show others how I deal with failure, and that builds character. And I think that's what's missing sometimes with our young people, with all the awards we're always giving them. We're always patting them on the back. Everything is so, so great. But we have to take a moment and ask them when they fall, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, but so I question, like, back to your I keep going back to your friend's question that they're not ready when they come through the door. Ask her, do you think that they're not ready because they've got the awards, but they haven't earned them?
Mm.
Right? So if they haven't earned them, they're cocky, they're arrogant.
And
But I know,
entitled.
yeah, but they're cocky and so if I study a lot of human psychology, so they're cocky and they're arrogant, But the more cocky and the more arrogant that they are, it means that deep down inside they're very insecure.
Mm.
They're very insecure and they can't perform. Like I just had this conversation the other day with a candidate that was upset that he wasn't getting $85,000 a year. Well, Tiffany, you need to ask me, well, how many years of experience did he have?
Oh yeah, how many years of experience did he have, Janice?
Take a wild guess. Is this off the
0 to 12 months.
two,
2 months.
2 years,
2 years. Mm.
a year and a half, software development, and in very, 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 very small environments. So he doesn't have that one runway and he doesn't have that failure, right? So he doesn't have that failure experience to know when an infrastructure or an organization really needs to put their business, that he has the experience to handle when something goes haywire, to anticipate it, right? Because there are some instances where you have to have gone through it to anticipate to know how to fix when it's going to go wrong.
Yep.
That's what I think the younger generation isn't understanding, right? It's
That
that's what they're missing.
I love this honing in on this being able to anticipate what's coming
Right.
and mitigating that, knowing
Right.
what to do to mitigate.
That so girlfriend, you know what my biggest habit is, right? I love to ski, right? I'm a big slalom skier, even though I can't do it with my foot the way it is. And so slalom skiing, the better that you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn to, we call it trust the boat. So the safer that you are is the further that you can lean back. So the further that you lean back, the closer to the water you are. It means that you have to learn how to trust the boat.
Mm.
So you have to learn how to trust the boat, but you can only learn how to trust the boat when you have more time behind the boat. So my analogy is when you're young in your career, and the only way that I can learn how to trust the boat is when I have more time behind the boat. And when I have more time behind the boat, I can learn subconsciously how to anticipate the hiccups that come on the water and know how to and know how to handle them.
Mm.
If I don't have the time behind the boat, my brain doesn't know how to anticipate and handle the hiccups that come in the water, because otherwise I'll really get hurt.
Mm.
I'll really get hurt. So it's the same analogy that a business is going to have, that if I don't have time behind the boat, I'm not going to know how to handle it and how to fix it. Otherwise, I'm going to get broken. I could die.
Mm. So let's crystallize some of the skills that you see future leaders needing. So you talked about resilience, we talked about courage, we talked about understanding the business needs, being able to anticipate what those needs are so you can mitigate risk and things that are coming. What else
Correct.
would you add to that, or like critical skills that this generation needs to succeed?
But again, I'm going to go back to, you need to anticipate whatever can go wrong will, and how to handle it with grace.
Mm. Oh,
I
handle
don't
grace.
handle it with grace. I don't see that. I mean, this is going to sound terrible saying this, but I see a lot of women, particularly, take things way too personally.
Mm.
And I know one of the things about me, and I think we've had this conversation too, but one, I don't know if it's because I'm dyslexic, or two, it's because I've just been around men a lot my whole life. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people say that I'm intimidating. And I know psychologically that has nothing to do with that. I know psychologically it just has to do with self confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to learn that emotions are just that they're emotions, that they'll come in the past, and that in business, a female needs to learn how to remove the emotion out of the equation.
Mm.
So for me, I simply remove the emotion out of the equation. And then a lot of times when you remove the emotion out of the equation, there's the devil side of that. And that's when a woman gets labeled, excuse my French, a bitch,
Mm.
right? When a woman removes the emotion out of the equation, you become strong, but you also run the risk of being getting a label. But there's a way to handle that with kindness, so that you can just remove that out of the equation, but you can handle things very gently and get things done. So I tend to think that too many women are way too emotional.
I think that as I listen to what you just shared, I think there's the balance in this is that making decisions that are emotional, you have to be able to remove the emotion. When you hear feedback, you need to be able to table the emotions, right? And you need to be
Right.
able to,
It's
meet people where they are. I think there are things, qualities that are important, graciousness, kindness.
graciousness,
These are
kindness.
these are all things that whether you're a man or a woman, you can have. But
Right.
as we are women in the workplace and you have this strength, I think the balance, the other side of the strength, like you say, is grace, right? So
Right.
there is a balance in how we can be humans in the workplace and still bring all the great things that we have about being a woman and still be that person that you're saying, remove the emotion and be able
Right.
to see, okay, here's the business problem, here's the business case, and be able to, give and receive
And
feedback
it's
without taking it
still a
personal.
it's just a business decision.
It's,
It is not personal.
and if you're not curing cancer, it ain't that serious. I mean, I, and I say that with tongue in cheek because I worked for a company that made sexy lingerie, right? And lotion and perfume and all these things, right? And at the end of the day, sometimes people got so stressed out about their deadlines and about their requests not coming in from the merchant team. And I mean, it was just sometimes the way they treated one another. And at the end of the day, I'd look at the head of, I worked for the global leader of HR, and I would say, like, it's panties, for goodness sake, it's lotions. We don't need to become so worked up over. That's what I mean by, if you're not curing cancer, like, is it really that serious at the end of the day that we would become so emotional and ruin team cohesiveness and that good energy and vibe and creativity and innovation because we're taking ourselves too seriously?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Okay. As we come to a close, I mean, we spent, Janice, you and I, we could vibe. We just need a glass of wine, right? But it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So, but we can vibe. And I've learned so much from you over the years, your wisdom, and there's value and benefit of having generations in a workplace. I know you mentioned your age earlier, but oh my goodness, I so look up to you and I so enjoy our talks together. And I think that there's a value when we can tap into all that skill and energy when you have it and you see it in the workplace, or if you have colleagues, or if you're networking with people that are not just in
Yeah.
your age group, right?
Yep.
Being able to have breadth and depth in your circle can be empowering in of itself. So, last couple questions, really. As you think about your superhero, Janice, I have one. One, I want you to tell me about your mentor, who your mentor is,
Mm.
but then I want you to tell me who your superhero is. If you could put yourself in a cartoon character, mine's Wonder Woman, like, who is your inspiration? Who would be your superhero? But then who was your role model?
You, I think my superhero, my mentor are the same.
Oh, okay.
I know that's funny. So my mentor and my superhero are Donna James. I mean, she's been my mentor for 20 years,
Mm,
and we share the same birthday, but we just vibe. I'm very close with her. I love her, but at the same time, she just keeps me grounded. She keeps me inspired. She can giggle with me. She can be serious with me. She can scold me.
mm,
She's, but talk about inspiring. We have a lot of things in common, but she's just a true and visionary. But she's also a woman who is very good about constantly changing. She's insatiable. She's calm. I love her commitment to the community.
mm,
And her heart is just pure as gold. And huge.
Oh,
I have nothing better to say than that. I mean, I remember the first day that I met her, but I also love the fact that I've been able to connect her with some people that have been hopefully very impactful for her. But she certainly has impacted my life and my family in some very, very major ways.
it's kudos to Donna James.
Yeah,
I've heard the name a lot in Central Ohio. She's a mover and shaker
yeah,
um, there as well, and with lots of organizations that foster and support women. Truly, someone to look up to, like myself, looking up to the next generation as someone to learn from and to grow into.
yeah.
So, Janice, what would you tell your 25-year-old self as you look back over your career? Maybe you already said it today, but what would you tell your 25-year-old self?
That was a rough time in my life.
Mm.
Don't do it. Ah,
All right, there it
yeah,
is.
I yeah, that was
Hindsight is 2020. Hindsight is 2020. But you are resilient, you are strong. And I so value and appreciate you, Janice, and all that you bring to the lives of young people and women. So, everybody, if you want to follow up with Janice, Janice, where can we find you? Tell us what you're doing right now and what is it that you need from our community?
I think what I need from our community is one to feel free to reach out. I love to help young women. You can reach out and connect with me, Janis Mitchell on LinkedIn. You can hook up with me on Facebook. You hook up with me on Instagram, Janice. Although my Instagram, I got to tell you, is pretty much dedicated to my workout efforts.
What?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. So it's funny. I have each one of my social medias are all very, very different. LinkedIn is all very professional. My Instagram is very much dedicated to my workout efforts. And we didn't talk about that, but I got very, very stressed out with my efforts with Info Fortress. So I dedicated. I started working out in the gym. So this is like 30 years ago, but very, very serious about it and treated that my workouts at the gym was part of my job. And so I go 5 days a week, twice a day. So
Wow.
I will tell the women, especially if you're an entrepreneur, take your health very, very seriously. And so I treat it, I do not miss. I do not miss
Wow.
going to the gym. So my Instagram is very, very gym related.
I can't wait.
Um,
What's your handle on Instagram?
Janis Mitchell, all
Oh,
one word, Janis,
straight Janice Mitchell.
just straight
Awesome.
Janis Mitchell.
All right,
Um,
everyone. I'm sorry,
so
Janice. Didn't mean to cut you
I
off.
will I will tell the young ladies that never stop dreaming and never stop reaching. I think that you got to believe in yourself and that you can do it, and to keep listening to Tiffany. She's got a lot of great points.
Oh, Janice, thank you so much. Enjoyed my time with you this morning. I'm very
You're welcome.
grateful to you and your words of wisdom. Everyone, you have been on another episode of She Rises, and today we've watched how she rise. Sometimes women build bridges, such as what Janice did. Sometimes they climb the ladder, and sometimes they get on the elevator. So, depending, right? If you're that girl, you got to send the elevator back down. But women like Janice who built bridges, we learned so much about that particular journey. Thank you so much, Janice, for being with us. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. See you later. That's a wrap for today's episode of She Rises. I hope you found inspiration, insight, and the motivation to keep pushing forward on your leadership journey. Remember, success isn't about reaching the top. It's about lifting others as you rise. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other powerhouse women in your life. Follow me, Tiffany O, and Virtual Partner for more resources on leadership, organizational growth, and creating workplaces where humanity thrives. Until next time, keep rising, keep leading, and keep making an impact.